Hello, welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes that you find some inspiration along the way. This is episode 117, a warm welcome to everybody joining me here in this creative space today. It is a crisp, bright blue sky, sunny day in the middle of November, year 2023. I am coming to you from Minnesota, where I live with my husband and our 2 young children. So, today I've got a lot of things to share with you. There were several things that were so close to finishing in the previous episode about 2 weeks ago, and I have since finished them, and I have cast on and finished a couple of other small items. I have read 2 books since we last talked, and I have another book that I decided not to finish, and then a 4th one that I am currently reading. And so we will have a little bit of things to chat about in that section. If you are new here, the way I organize my videos are I usually start with a little vlog section, like a video collage montage of bits and pieces from whenever I last recorded, and then we go into an intro and welcome section, and then a finished projects section, and then works in progress, and then eats and reads, where I talk about things I've baked or cooked recently and books that I've been reading, and then sometimes there's a food for thought section at the end and sometimes not. All depends on whether or not I have some ideas or things that I've been thinking about that I can put into some sort of tangible, cohesive manner to share with you. I don't believe I have anything jotted down today for that section, so spoiler, there is not a food for thought section today. But yes, I do have lots and lots of projects to share with you today. Another thing to note, if you are new here, I do include closed captioning for all of the videos that I have here on my YouTube channel. Click on that CC button, and also if my speaking speed is too fast or too slow for your preferences, YouTube allows you to adjust that speed as well. I do include timestamps for the different sections that I mentioned earlier. They are in the description box below this video. Sometimes you have to click on show more to see that. And then when you click on the timestamps, it'll bring you to each section. I find that helpful sometimes when I'm looking for specific information, but also if I'm watching a video in sections, then I can come back to certain parts and not spend too much time trying to figure out where I was. I do use Ravelry for all of my project pages, and those will be linked separately below, so I'll have a section that says designers or makers mentioned. Try to link directly to their website, and then you can kind of look through there. And then there'll be a Ravelry projects page section where I list the links to all of the projects that I share here, and then you can click on that to get to the Ravelry project page. I do try to share the majority, if not all or more, information here on YouTube to provide a different way of learning in addition to those notes written in the project pages. And then there's also something that helps, seeing a fabric in motion versus just in pictures on the Ravelry project pages. So with that, let's get started. This is my second version of the Building Blocks Drop pattern by Amy Sher. The first one I knit was a gray one, and then this one is a brown version, so now I have a cool toned version and a warm toned version. I knit this as a slip over, and I made several little modifications to it. So I cast on, actually let's back up a little bit and give you some information on the pattern itself. And hopefully I'll have a screenshot here on the screen as well, sharing what it looks like from the designer's images. So this Building Blocks Drop comes in multiple different views. Amy writes the pattern to have the option of long sleeves or no sleeves, cropped or full length with pockets or no pockets. This is knit bottom up. The gauge is at 17 stitches and 24 rows for 4 inches of stockinette stitch in the round. It is written for worsted weight yarn. The needle sizes are a US 8, which is a 5mm, and a US 6, which is a 4mm, the smaller needle size being used for the ribbing on the cuffs, the neckline, and the body hem. I used the same needles as the pattern and I did get gauge. The yarn that I used is by Pearl Soho. Here's the tag on the screen. The base is called Hedgerow. It comes in 243 yards for 100 grams, so it knits up closer to maybe a DK or light worsted weight yarn. The yarn colorway I used is House Wren, and this fiber content is 93% merino, 3.5% cashmere, and 3.5% mulberry silk. This is all I have left, and I did calculate how much yarn I needed, for each round of the body, and it's harder to do for a bottom-up construction because the top section, you have the front and then you have the back and then different number of stitches because of the shoulder shaping. So it's a little bit harder to gauge how much yarn I need at the end. However, because I have a little bit of gray left from the previous slip over that I made, I was going to be okay with using gray for the hems, or not the hems, the neckline and the sleeve cuffs if I needed to. I didn't think I needed to, but if I needed to, I'd be okay using that for like the bind off or around here and there. But I didn't need it. I was just fine. This is what I have left. And I will pull up my project information here so I can tell you more specifics. I have less than 4 grams left, so it worked out just fine. I ended up using 191 grams total for my project. So I believe there are 11 sizes, and I cast on the smallest size, and the smallest size has a finished circumference of 38.5 inches, and that gives me about 6 inches of positive ease. And the recommendation for how much ease the pattern is written for is 7 to 11 inches of positive ease. So I chose one that's on the lower end of it. And then what I did was, once I got to the part where you knit the top, there, that's better, knit the top front section and the back section flat, is that I followed directions for a size D. And the reason I did that was because I wanted a deeper yoke depth, deeper arm side area, and so all I did was change the number of rows, not the number of stitches. So the number of stitches I have are still following size A, but the number of rows in this top portion, I followed size D. So then when I got to the shoulder shaping section, when I'm working the stitches for the short row shaping, I followed size A again. And then for the neckline, again, I still have the same number of stitches as size A, and I did the neckline for size A. Because you pick up for that neckline, if you wanted to make it smaller or bigger, you just pick up less or more stitches to adjust that neckband. And then for the sleeve cuff, it's actually similar in the sense with this neckband. If you wanted it slightly bigger, slightly smaller, you could just pick up a different number of stitches to what your preference is. I did knit this to be a cropped length, slightly longer than my other one though, because I did size D on top instead of size C. Size C I did for the previous one. That also lengthens the entire body length as well by a little bit, but I also knit the body length just a little bit longer than the previous one, maybe by 2 inches. I haven't put them side to side to compare yet, but this one goes just slightly past my belly button, maybe an inch past, whereas the gray one I believe hits either just at the belly button or slightly above. So this one goes slightly past my natural waist and goes to my hip bones, like high hip length, whereas the other one hits more at my natural waist. And I just wanted to have 2 different options for how I wanted to layer my pieces, and I did knit this with the purpose of it being a layering piece, and so it's nice just to have them be slightly different from each other, but both being neutrals. I can really mix and match and wear them with anything. So here I have worn it with a plaid flannel button-up. It's super comfortable. It just provides that little bit of extra warmth, but without all of the extra bunchy layers. If you've been watching for a while, you may know that bunchiness really bothers me in winter coats. I just don't like feeling so constricted, and so some sweaters, the heavier weight they are, the more room they take up, and the more room they take up, the bunchier they are. And so sometimes having a slip over or a vest option just makes that much more comfortable. One more thing I wanted to mention is that I did say the yarn weight is closer to DK than worsted. I do not find it too gapey or holey. I really like this yarn. I feel like it's toothy, a little sticky, but not super rough. And I love the tweed specks in it. This one has maybe black and like rusty red orange and some tannish brown, a little bit of cream. I did not have to alternate my yarn, meaning like switch it up every other row. I just finished one, split spliced it, joined it together, and then kept going. I can't even tell where I joined it. It's so seamless and it looks really, really nice. And I followed the instructions and did the 3-needle bind off on the wrong side for the shoulders. I just think it looks really nice. I had mentioned with the previous one that I was debating whether to graft the shoulder seam or do the 3-needle bind off, and I just decided to do the 3-needle bind off because I like that little detail there. But yeah, I don't think anything else to say about it. I just really, really enjoy knitting this pattern. I found it very clear and easy to modify, and I could definitely see having this slip over in multiple colors, and bright ones too. That could be really fun, or like a fuzzy one that could be really nice. Anyway, I do like this one a lot though, because I feel like it's drapey, but still just the nature of the yarn makes it not droopy. So it doesn't necessarily have a lot of structure to it, but it isn't like hanging on me, if that makes sense. It's still lightweight. It still has some, I don't know, it's really not that structured. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here. I just don't feel like it's hanging. Like it sits very nicely. And the fabric I feel like is a really nice density. And yeah, I might try knitting another one. I'll have to think of the color. I have some options, but I was thinking about knitting another one using linen quill held double. If you've been here for some time, you know I have quite a selection of linen quill yarn on hand from knitting various different things with that yarn. It is a Purl Soho yarn. It is a light fingering weight yarn, but held together. I can achieve an 18 stitch gauge using US 8 or 5mm needles, and so yeah, I'd have to play around with it. I think with a US 9 needle, I would probably get the 17 stitch gauge for this pattern, but I'll have to see if I like how that fabric feels. If I don't like how that fabric feels, if it's like too loose or gapey for me, then I would probably stick with the US 8. I'd have to calculate how that affects my finished circumference to see if I need to go to a size B instead of a size A for what I cast on, to then get somewhere of a size between the A and the B, because being a slip over, I don't want it to have negative ease, so I just need to figure out some knitting math there to see how that will turn out for me. Another option would be to hold the light fingering weight double and then add like a mohair or Surrey silk with it, which could be really delightful. I don't know. We'll see. That's future dream knitting. We'll see where that goes. The next finished project to share with you is one that I was almost finished with last time. This is the Classic Ribbed Hat, which is a free pattern by Purl Soho. And this one is one that I'm knitting as part of their knit along that goes through the end of November. It is the free pattern, the Classic Ribbed Hat, and their pattern is written for using the Cashmere Merino Bloom yarn, which is by Purl Soho. I don't know if I have a tag for it here. Let me see. Maybe I have one in this. Yeah, I have one in here. Okay. Here you go. It is 75% extra fine merino, 25% cashmere at 218 yards per 100 grams. And it is the most soft yarn that I've ever worked with. It is so nice. This is a DK weight yarn. And the hat that I knit, this one is, I think, fig or fresh fig is the purple color. It is heathered and it is for my mom. I cast on the adult medium size and knit it to the adult large. I started with 105 grams of yarn and I used 94 grams. And the adult medium has you cast on 120 stitches. I did an Old Norwegian cast on. I used the size US 3 or 3.25mm needles, which is the needle size called for in the pattern. And I just find it a really enjoyable knit. You start from the bottom And so once I cast on, I can really just take it anywhere. It's 1 by 1 ribbing, so knit 1, purl 1, and you just keep knitting until you get to the length that you want, and then you start the crown. So the crown for me, maybe this will be useful to you if you're trying to figure out how much yarn you need to reserve for the crown. I use about 16 to 17 grams. Measuring that before and after amount of yarn used, I find super useful, because then if I want to use up the entire skein of yarn, I can just manage that up to the very end. And so yeah, this one is for my mom. I really like it. I hope she does too, because if she doesn't, that's okay. She'll just give it back to me and then I get the hat. So I'm okay either way, but I love it. It's so comfortable with the brim folded up. It's nice and warm over the ears, but if you wanted to wear it a little slouchy, you could just not have the brim folded up as much or at all. And I feel like it makes it adjustable, because sometimes you don't want all of that extra kind of on your neck here. So you can always fold the back higher and the front not as much if you want the forehead more covered, or vice versa. If you have your hair like in a bun, maybe you want to have a little bit of slouchiness in the back. The ribbing keeps it elastic so it stays on your head. And yeah, I am not done with this pattern yet. I have several more I want to make, and I have one on the needles that I'll share with you in the work in progress section. That one is for me. I'm so excited. But yes, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. We'll talk about that when we get to that part. Next finished project are a pair of socks I finished for my dad. I think I was also almost done with these last time. Here they are. Oh, I love them. I used a Patons Kroy sock yarn for this in turquoise stripes, so it's a self-striping yarn. It is labeled as fingering weight, but I feel like it knits up closer to sport weight, and so I used a US 2 or 2.75 millimeter needle for this. And last time I think I explained that I had used US 1s with this yarn before, and it just hurt my hands. It was not enjoyable to knit that way, and so on US 2s it's much better. I've also tried it on US 1.5, but I like the US 2 better, I think. And so for these are my dad's Christmas present, and I cast on 64 stitches on the US 2s using an old Norwegian cast on. I knit, how many rounds for the leg? 50? I think I did 50 rounds of 2 by 2 ribs, so knit 2, purl 2, and then I did a shadow wrap heel, and then I continued the foot with the ribbing on the top and then stockinette on the bottom, and that I knit a total of 60 rounds before starting the toe section. And I love that they turned out pretty close to identical. And I did mean to do that. I started it at the same start of a stripe, and the only thing is at the very end, I think the toes are slightly different. There was like just a couple of inches left for grafting that had the lighter green peek through, but I think that was pretty good. And I like how the heel showed up in that bullseye effect that it often does with self-striping yarn. And just for reference, I ended up using, how much yarn? Oh, I didn't write down how much yarn I ended up, oh, maybe I did, 74? I think I used 74 grams of yarn. My gauge was 7.5 stitches for 1 inch, and my dad wears a US 10 men's shoe size for reference there. So yeah, these are socks for my dad for Christmas, and I am excited to have them off the needles. I knit these as part of Denise of Earth Tones Girls Falling Leaves sock knit along, and that ends November 15th. 3 more finished projects to share with you. Now these 3 I have not shared yet here. I have these 2 fingerless mitts that I knit up for my niece and nephew, and I used the World's Simplest Mittens pattern by Tin Can Knits. It is a free pattern, and I modified it for fingerless mitts. And so I'll start with this one first. I follow the child size and worsted weight gauge. The pattern comes in multiple sizes and multiple gauges, which is really, really great because you can really come up with whatever size you're looking for in whatever weight of yarn. And so I follow the child size, and this yarn is yarn I had remaining from a pair of socks that I knit. It's from the Farmer's Daughter Fiber Sock Squad. It's from the February Sock Squad yarn, and this colorway is Bitterroot. It's in the Rocky Mountain Pearls base, which is 400 yards for 100 grams, 80% superwash Blueface Leicester, 20% nylon. It is a very durable yarn, and When you're knitting with it, it can feel a little crunchy at first, but then once you block it, it softens up a lot. But I just like how durable it is. I feel like it's a really good one for mitts that end up having a lot of friction because I don't feel like it pills as easily as some super soft merino yarns. It is superwash as well, and kids' hands often get very dirty, so it'll be nice that my sister-in-law can throw these in the wash. So I really like how this pink color knit up. I did hold it double for worsted weight, and the pinks just really blended very nicely throughout. It's a very soft, earthy pink color. And so what I did to modify it was I knit the cuff, I think the same length as it recommends in the pattern, and then I did like maybe 1 or 2 extra rounds before starting the gusset section. And then for the hand, I just knit like 8 rounds, and then I just switched to the smaller needle size to do about 2 rounds of 1x1 ribbing before binding off in pattern. And this used 36 grams of yarn total. So if you have sock yarn remaining from socks that you've knit, you can potentially get a pair of child size mitts out of it for 40 grams or less. Of course, your gauge may vary, so your yardage may vary, but in general, I would say 40 grams or less, you might be able to get out a pair of fingerless mitts. The second pair I used Malabrigo Rios worsted, and that's 100% superwash merino. These are super soft, and I followed the first one pretty closely. I think I might have knit slightly less for the cuff, and then maybe 1 extra round before starting the gusset, and then I knit the hand portion, I think 10 rounds instead of 8, and then did the 2 rounds of ribbing and then bound off. And for the thumb, I also just knit, I think 3 rounds and then 2 rounds of ribbing and then bound off. And this one, I used 33 grams of yarn, 33 grams of worsted weight yarn. So these are going to my niece and nephew for their birthdays that are coming up, and I'm so excited for them to get them. The last finished project I have to share with you today this is super fun because I got the idea, I've had the idea for some time, but I just haven't gotten around to doing it, and my youngest was asking for all sorts of things, but she wanted leg warmers, and so, dun 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 dun, oh my goodness, these are so cute. They remind me of Neapolitan ice cream. So I use US 4 3.5 millimeter needles for this pink cuff portion, and then I used US 7 or 4.5 millimeter needles for the rest. What I did was the pink portion is Little Lion Head Knits worsted weight merino that I had remaining from another project. Did I make mittens for those too? Oh no, I think I made slippers like years ago. And then for the rest of it, I had remaining self-striping yarn from Mud Punch from a pair of socks that I had knit previously, and I had about 37 grams remaining, so I wanted to use up the entire thing. It was already split into 2 because I had been knitting socks with it, and then I held it with a Knit Pick Swish fingering yarn, which is I think 100% superwash merino that I had dyed with coffee. So it's like a very light tan color, and so I had that split into 2. And I ended up using 32 grams of that. It's a little bit lighter weight than the Mud Punch sock yarn, so you use up slightly less than the other one. So yeah, the goal was just to knit until the self-striping yarn ran out, and then I did a little bit of ribbing at the end, and that is on the US 4 as well, and I did not switch back to the contrast color. I just knit until the yarn ran out. And I really like how they turned out. She can wear them either direction if she wants. And I did knit them pretty long, so my vision is for her to wear them like scrunched down, and I think it'll be super cute. I have them on a pair of sock blockers. I'll show you a picture here on the screen where they're like scrunched down. But I think it's going to look super cute over leggings, and I will be tucking this away either to put in her Christmas stocking or to wrap under the tree. I always think it's fun to put like socks or stockings in stockings. Anyway. We'll see where it ends up, but it is definitely going to be something I think she's going to be super excited about. are on to works in progress. I just have a couple to show you because, well, I had a lot of finished projects to share with you, so that's what I was working on primarily. I'll start with one that I did share last time, and I can't remember if I had split for sleeves yet or not. This is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose, and I am working on the sleeves currently. The body isn't done yet, but since I ran out of yarn, well, I didn't run out of yarn, but I finished one cake of yarn in the body, and then so I just decided I was gonna split it up and do the sleeves. I often like to do that just to change things up a little bit, and then I feel like once the sleeves are done and I go back to the body and I finish off the body, it's like, whoa, it's done. It's like a surprise that it's done already. I don't know. So this is where I'm at. Oh, it is just lovely. I think at the body I'm going to knit maybe another inch or two before I do a few inches of ribbing. That measurement is different from the pattern. This is my 5th ranunculus, and I've knitted in various weights of yarn at different gauges and in different fits, and I just do basically whatever I want to. So on the sleeves section now, I have them on short cables, and so I'll just switch back and forth to knit each one. They each have a thing of yarn attached to them. I'm going to knit full length sleeves, and because I have longer arms, I often make the sleeve length a lot longer, and so I may end up using a full cake of yarn for each one. The yarn I'm using is by Pearl Soho. It is a new base that they have called Yonder. It is 50% alpaca and 50% Highland wool. It is not superwash. It's an Aran weight, and it comes at 140 yards for 100 grams. And the colorway I'm using is Smoky Mauve, and I really like this color. It's like a gray, a very warm gray, slightly lavender. And if you look at it up close, it does have a little bit of color variation to it, but very subtle. And I suppose nobody's going to be looking at my sweater that close, but I will, and it will look lovely. This is so drapey. I would say it's a heavier fabric. So if you are looking for something that's lighter weight, maybe not. I feel like it's heavier. So it's Aran weight, but not all Aran weight yarn is necessarily heavy. It can still feel lofty, but I definitely feel like this has a really good drape to it. It is, I don't think it's gonna be, like, a word that comes to mind is slouchy. Like, it feels really slouchy, and it feels, I almost feel like it's going to be like a weighted blanket, but in a good way. I mean, weighted blankets usually are a good thing, right? It's going to feel like a weighted blanket, and I think it's going to feel like a good sigh. Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be like, and I am so delighted. I'm going to knit the sleeves with 0 decreases all the way to the end, and then I'll probably do a rapid decrease and then knit a cuff. I do want them full length. I probably will have them cover some of my wrist, maybe. I do end up often like pushing sleeves up, but I think with the cuff being a smaller circumference, if I push it up, it should stay up and not slide a bunch like when I'm washing dishes or whatever. But I don't know. I just feel like I want it maximum coziness, and if I shorten the sleeves to be 3/4, I feel like I'm going to be tugging down at it. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, I definitely plan on knitting long sleeves, full length, but I'm getting close. I think this will probably be done, you know, in the next 2 weeks. So when I come back here, I'm hoping I'll be able to squeeze one more episode in before November's over and wear this that time. I think so. And I should probably tell you a little bit more about the pattern itself. I think I did go over it last time. The pattern has multiple sizes, and just in case maybe you didn't know, the pattern was initially released several years ago under one size. And so because people aren't one size, everybody just had all this varying ease, and depending on how you modified the gauge, you could adjust the size, but it only had one size. And now it actually has multiple sizes. I want to say more than 10 sizes. And that just makes it much more size inclusive for everybody. And so the first size is a 46-inch chest circumference. And so what I've been doing is adjusting the gauge to go down in that amount of positive ease. 46 inches would be 14 inches of positive ease for me. And if I was knitting it at like a very loose, airy gauge, that probably would be okay. But because I am knitting it with an Aran weight yarn and the fabric is definitely not super loose or gapey, I don't want that much ease. This pattern has over 20,000 projects on Ravelry. So it says it was published in June of 2017. It is for 14 stitches by 20 rows of 4 inches in stockinette stitch after blocking. Recommended needle size is a US 10 or 6 millimeter. It is in 11 sizes, 4 languages, and there's a ton of video tutorials included, and I don't use any of them, but if you needed to, the information is there. And you do knit it top down. It's a round yoke pullover with lace and textured stitches. And then what I really like is that there are raglan increases along the underarm to help with that shaping. And I feel like that is a pretty crucial part of shaping in round yoke patterns. And it does come in different necklines, different sleeve lengths, different body lengths, and all of that stuff you can adjust on your own. So for the front, I do omit the short row shaping to have more of a crew neck fit instead of a boat neck fit. Also, I feel like if there's short row shaping in the front, then it's harder for me to distinguish between the front and the back, because there's usually short row shaping in the back to raise the fabric amount in the back to account for how our bodies are shaped. But if there's also short row shaping in the front before that textured yoke starts, then it's not as easy to tell the front and the back. Anyway, I like the fit of this much better, and I've been doing that for several of the ones I've knit more recently. I think the first two I knit, I did follow the directions for the short row shaping in the front, and they fit just fine as well, but I really like this version of it. I am using US 7 for the ribbing. Neckline, I use the main pattern needles, but the rest of the ribbing I will be doing in US 7, and then the body stockinette section and the yoke I used US 9 because I don't think I even tried it on a US 10, but because the US 9 gave me 15 stitches for 4 inches, I didn't really actually want to meet gauge of 14 stitches in the pattern because I really didn't actually want the 46 inches as a result. And so my new gauge gives me closer to 43 to 44 inches, which still gives me like 10 to 11 inches of positive ease or something like that. So 11 to 12 inches of positive ease. Anyway, I think it'll be just fine, and being drapey and not super structured, it's not going to balloon out, but I will definitely have plenty of ease, and it's going to be that cozy sigh sweatshirty feel that I am aiming for, that I can throw on over anything, jeans, leggings, whatever I want. Next up is one that I had alluded to earlier. So I have been really wanting a red hat, and I feel like the perfect red can be really hard to find. And there are like bluer reds, there are browner reds, there are orangey reds, and I like them all, and I don't usually wear red very often actually. Not that I don't have anything against red, I just don't gravitate towards it, but as an accessory, I've been really wanting a red hat. So I am knitting myself a red poppy hat in the Cashmere Merino Bloom by Purl Soho, 218 yards for 100 grams, 75/25 extra fine merino cashmere. It is super, super soft. I have on these pomegranate stitch marker Progress Keepers by Yura of Knit Boop Studio. I thought they just matched perfectly, so I had to use them. They used to have these small lobster claws on them that I think were even smaller than some of the other ones I had seen, and it was just really hard for me to use with my fingers, so I just undid them and put on these round lever ones that I like much better because I can use them as both Progress Keepers or stitch markers, and just having that versatility is really nice, and they're much easier to open. So I'm knitting these on a US 3 or 3.25 millimeter 16-inch cable needles, and it's just 1x1 ribbing like I mentioned earlier, and I'm really, really liking this. I think it's gonna look really good. Of course, having that tail right in front of my face looks a little funny, But yeah, I think this color is gonna look great, and I'm just so excited about it. And so this is one that I just keep in my purse or backpack to have on the go for whenever I have a few minutes, because it's so easy to pick up and put down whenever. I would love to have this hat done by the end of the month because I really want to wear it. We are on to Eats and Reads. I should have shown some footage in the beginning of this episode featuring some things that I have been making, and at least one of them are the apple cider caramels, and that's a recipe by Smitten Kitchen. I have made that every year for many years, and it does not take a lot of ingredients. It requires, I think, apple cider, not from concentrate, heavy cream, flaky salt, cinnamon, butter. I think that's it. And you have to be very diligent about watching the temperature as you're making the caramels, because too high, too low can just mess the whole thing up. I feel like candy in general is just kind of a finicky thing to make. But I do make these every year, and my kids look forward to them every year. Yeah, so I finally made them. And I also tried a new to me recipe. It was like a spinach, egg, mozzarella casserole, and that was really good. I didn't follow the recipe exactly because I rarely do. But I'll have a picture of it here on the screen and link to it in the description box below this video. I thought it was really tasty. I've also been able to heat it up the next day, and that was still really good. So that's a winner. So I think we'll go on to the books. The books I was talking about earlier, I had started reading the Legacy of Orisha trilogy by Tomi Adeyemi. She is a Nigerian-American author. This trilogy is new to me. The first book is Children of Blood and Bone. Again, I'll put a picture of the cover here on the screen. That was published in 2018. And then the second book, Children of Virtue and Vengeance, was published in 2019. I didn't read them then. I just read them now in the last 2 weeks. And I really enjoyed them. So they are young adult fantasy fiction, and the premise of it is a civil war between the monarchy and the magi. And the magi are these magical people who were stripped of their powers and are trying to get them back. And the world building I found really immersive. The character development I enjoyed. But I did enjoy the first book much better than the second book, because in the first book, I felt like I was getting to know this world, I was getting to know these characters, I was just getting a sense for who they were, how they played together, what was going on. And then the second book, I felt like there was still beautiful imagery and things like that, but then I was like, what's the plot again? What's happening? And why are some of these characters so wishy-washy? Can't they just make a decision? What side are they on anyway? Can't they just get it together and like do something? I don't know. That's kind of like the general idea of how I was feeling throughout the second book. I still read it, I still finished it, but there weren't like happy endings, right? Because it's a series. I think it's a trilogy, so there's a third book coming. But I don't think the third book is even coming until next year, maybe. Maybe I don't have that right. I don't remember exactly. But there was no happy ending at the end of the second book, and I was just left thinking, ugh. So I love Adeyemi's writing. I will read the third book when it comes out because I need to know what's going to happen. I need a happy ending. I don't know if there will be a happy ending, but I need to know what's happening to these people. So I will read the third book. There's some violence in it. If it's too much, put it down and come back to it later if you need to. Yeah, I did enjoy it, and I will read the third one when it comes out. I'm just still like thinking, for the second one, but I really like the first book. The book that I started and I'm not finishing and I'm returning to the library is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. It was released in 2023, I think this summer, and I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand what's happening. Well, I kind of understand what's happening, but I'm not invested. I don't feel connected to the characters. I'm just kind of confused, and I don't know. I'm not getting it. So that's going back to the library. I have no qualms with not finishing books. If I'm just not into it, it doesn't matter how many pages I'm in. It could be 10 pages. I will just return it. So the fourth book that I am currently reading is also a series, is This Vicious Grace by Emily Thiede, and this is the book 1 of the Last Finestra series. This one is also considered young adult fantasy. It's young adult fantasy romance, and there is magic involved. I think the main characters are like 18 years old, and I have to say it's slightly ridiculous. You might be eye rolling through it. It might be slightly cringeworthy. But that being said, like, I'm still enjoying it. So I feel like if you just go into it not having super high expectations and being okay with kind of corny lines, and it's something that I will finish. I'll finish it. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel at the end of this first book, if I'm going to feel like I need to read the second one, but it's not a book that I feel strongly enough to want to buy the second book, because I feel like if I buy the second book, then I have to buy the first book. But if my library doesn't have it, maybe I'll just have to ask them if they're planning on ordering it and then go from there. So the premise of this book is that there is this girl who has a gift from the gods, and she's supposed to be able to magnify a partner's magic, and she's on this hunt to find who that partner is, except she keeps killing them kind of accidentally, kind of because she knows her touch can kill people, but not like she's not purposefully trying to kill them. And so she's on this like quest to try to find a partner in time before this invasion of like hungry demons comes and takes over their island. Okay, I think that is everything that I have for you today. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are taking good care of yourselves, your loved ones, your neighbors. Cheers to being creative, and I will talk to you next time.